shooting, and I said, what is that? I said, what's going on with this? This wiretap gun, it's probably for video production. You know, they do these video productions. And the kids, they say, well, that's not, you know, a play gun, a real gun. I was going out there to say no. And I went, oh my God, that was really close. That was
okay. What's your name, ma'am?
My name is
Patty?
Patty. He's yelling everybody get up right now. He's in the library. He's telling everybody get up right now.
Okay.
He's in the library. Oh, I have him in the library shooting at students with the lady that I have in the library on the phone.
Okay, try and keep as many people down as you can. Okay. Do you know who he is? Okay.
This is the exact same conversation we've been having since I was in high school. I was a junior when the Columbine shooting happened. I was part of the first generation that saw routine school shootings. We have now produced the second school shooting generation in this country. We dare not allow there to be a third. Something is broken, if it is even possible, for the same debate around the same solutions that we all know are the right thing to do. They won't prevent every incident, they won't save every life, but we know what to do, and it has not happened.
Thank you.
This is the emergency broadcast system. This is not a test. Repeat, this is not a test. This is our virus of the following steps. If exposed, remove the
Podcast for the curious mind. I don't know what that means.
Broadcasting live from a Chinese-made microphone high atop Sioux Nation. I am Corey with Clemens and May. How you gentlemen doing this fine Monday evening? First good. We already saw May get yelled at, so check the Patreon comment. Yeah. Everything's good now, though, May. Everyone's happy.
Let's hope so.
Okay. Right.
Let's hope so. I had to sweep real quick.
Attaboy. See, you should have just done that from the get-go, huh? Blinking. If May blinks at any time, know that he is in need of help. Then we have Clemens with us in probably the coolest backlit room of the.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Thank you.
He's got mood lighting.
Yeah.
Setting the tone.
I don't know if that's the right. I don't know if that's the right thing to say about today's show. So, okay, we let off with Columbine last week, and which was a tough one to hear all of that, hear all of the accusations and dig into a little bit of research, and a lot of people dying after Columbine, which was, I thought, very interesting. Like a lot of kids, obviously a lot of like psychological issues there, having to survive something like that. And we saw that like in the, we didn't play that clip last week, but I thought just to sort of remind everyone that this is, diving into Columbine. This is a whole research. Now I know we're entitled the Franklin cover-up today. Have you guys ever heard of the Franklin cover-up?
Not until like last week or when we talked about it. That was the first time I heard about it. So, and then I watched the CU or the Nebraska football game and then the volleyball game, and I was just thinking, I was like, oh man, the great state of Nebraska. What are we doing? But
yeah. I had not heard of it either, and before we had mentioned it, and man, it's interesting.
Well, we played that clip where John DeCamp was talking on that radio show, and he said that he saw a definite link between Columbine and the Franklin cover-up, which he had worked on years prior. And so I just thought that, and by chance he happened to get the pieces of evidence between Eric Harris's parents, the mom and the dad. He got free access to the basement, got all of their records. And then on his way back, somehow the Denver, police got there before he did and was able to detain all of that documentation at his office, and to this day is not released. And he's dead. He died in 2017. So, I mean, and for him to see links, so I did a little research on him. And he wasn't just like a senator from Nebraska, but he was a Green Beret in Vietnam.
Well, I did not know that.
Mm-hmm. He was involved in a Phoenix project, which is very interesting. He was very good friends with the head of the CIA, Bill Campy. I got it pulled up somewhere. We'll get it. But he was the man that replaced him as head of CIA. So John DeCamp was friends with the head of the CIA, right? Bill. The guy that replaced him was George Bush Sr. And it was
interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise.
So that's interesting. History behind John DeCamp. He was involved also in when Saigon fell, removing the kids out of Saigon and getting them to the US. So he didn't it seems like he was a very good man, a decent, did his job type of fella. And then returned back to his, little town of Nebraska, Lincoln, which isn't we talk about Lincoln, but you've been there several times, May. How big is Lincoln? Just regular population.
I don't know it off the top of my head.
A couple 100,000, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not huge. I don't know. You'll have to look it up. But, so he is from the, Nebraska is, very sparse. There's not very many big areas in Nebraska. There's one big town on one side of Nebraska, and then there's another big town.
Huskers were pretty big back then, though. I mean, this is 94, right? So, I want to say that the Huskers were
that's
championship team.
I just pulled it up. It says population 289,102.
Okay.
Decent size, yeah.
Yeah, and that's current population, right? I don't suppose
I pulled it up on Apple Maps. So I would say that's current.
Yeah.
I'm sure back in 92 it was quite a bit less than that. Maybe around that size, but not huge. Definitely not a huge town compared to some of these cities. And Omaha is not too far from Lincoln. What, about 2-hour drive or so?
Yeah, 2, 3. Yeah, right in there. Yeah.
So, which in the Midwest is really nothing. You tell other people that and they're like, oh my Lord. I've told a New Yorker that. They're like, it's a 3-hour drive. Oh, that's, but they'll do 5 hours commute on a train to get, to their job in the morning, and they think nothing of that. They're like, oh no, but I'm on the train. I can just sit and read.
Yeah. Watch homeless people piss on each other. Just, whatever entails the train duties.
All right. So that's, and it's interesting. The only reason I know he's friends with the former head of the CIA, and I really should look up his name. It was from I believe 71 to 76. Let's see, I'm on page 28. I can find it here real quick. It's William. What was it? Anyway, we'll have someone look it up here for us. Head of CIA. I don't want to get too bogged down in details, but what the reason I bring it up is what I found fascinating is in the documentary, he's interviewed in it. Like, when's the last time you see like an active CIA, head of CIA, admit that there was a conspiracy?
Like admit?
Not.
Yeah, be like, yeah,
I would say hardly, right? I mean, they're not going to ever. Yeah.
Right. And this
unless
guy,
there was a motive behind it, no.
Well, and there's some weird stuff, you know. I don't know, but I wanted to just give a little bit of backup idea on who John DeCamp like associated with or used for his verification to show he was sort of like his, you know, his sort of character witness that he used in those documentaries, show that he wasn't crazy. Because what we're about to get into is crazy. Is crazy. Like,
yeah,
crazy. And so like you want to sort of verify the people telling the story, because you don't want, you don't want to just be, and this book got completely ridiculed. And it was fascinating because as I'm researching, I'm going through the cycle, right? Like I'm studying Columbine, and then I discovered John DeCamp's name. So then I look up John DeCamp, and then you find John DeCamp, and then you hear someone mention Franklin scandal, and you hear someone else mention Franklin scandal. So then I'm like, all right, well, what's the Franklin scandal? Because all of them are like, oh yeah, Franklin scandal, yeah. And then they continue on with the conversation, and I'm like, well, what the hell is a Franklin scandal? And so I look it up, and that's the story we're going to delve into. And this is the story as told by John DeCamp. He writes a book about this in 1993. And he wrote an updated version in 2004. And that's the book I read. And in the 2004 edition, in the preface, in his updates, he includes a whole page and a half on Columbine.
Which would naturally spark your interest because you're like, where does Columbine come into this? Like, how does a school shooting tie into this cover up?
And you guys remember hearing the video or hearing the audio clip in that radio show where he, mentions that it felt very similar to his Franklin cover up incident. And the whole story, there's a whole timeline here, right? There's, banks are created in the 70s, and then there's board members that join the bank, and then other board members with those board members overwhelm the bank, and then they take over, just sort of how finances work in that world. And so that's what happens to this bank in Omaha. And a guy by the name of Larry King, and we're not talking CNN, not talking Lawrence King. I'm not going to call him Lawrence because everyone else called him Larry, right? So it's Larry King. This guy, Larry King, becomes one of these, members of the Franklin Credit Union. And there's, he becomes publicized in local Omaha lore, right? Like you see him on the little 5 p.m. news clippets where like they're like the opening of the Franklin Credit Union, and there's he's standing there with scissors cutting the ribbon. That's Larry King. That's the type of guy he is. He's very involved. The whole premise of doing this is so he can give small loans to local urban area business owners so that they can create business, wanting to help out North Omaha. Now, I don't know if you guys know Omaha area very well or not, but so
try
he's
to stay out of it.
Yeah. Well, I don't blame you after reading this, like Jesus Christ. So, he's, trawling along. He's a Republican, part of the Republican Party, riding the Reagan train, all the way to the top. He actually, when they the GOP nomination, for a candidate, we're coming up on that time where the parties nominate who they're going to vote for president or send to a primary public election, whoever wins the primary. So he was there in 1984. And he got to sing the national anthem. And it blew the I can probably find a video of it too, just to give you guys an idea.
It wasn't like Fergie national anthem. It was actually like legit job well done.
So he's I mean it's you'll have to hear for yourself what you think of him. But like it's sort of funny because I was the Republican Party fighting like the racism charges they do now, where like how for now when you say Republican, people are like, oh, they're all racist. Like is it the same way now as it was back then? Because it sort of seems like it's a little bit of pandering. Like, hey, we found this.
That'd be a question for Devin, since he's like 40 years older than all of us.
I know. I miss. He's got to work late. He's got to pay for.
I guess for me, I would have to say that, like, I don't think that sort of thing would spur out of nowhere. So I would say that it would be just as rampant then as it was when they found it. Racism is what I'm talking about.
Ladies and gentlemen, the chair now recognizes Lawrence
This
King
is
Jr.,
it right here, 1980.
a member of the Nebraska delegation, for the singing of the national anthem.
Oh, yeah. I'll bring it home.
So first off, that's not what I expected him to look like at all. I figured he'd be a curmudgeony old white man. No,
up and comer, bro. Like riding the ranks up there. This is 1984. All is good. I mean, that's huge.
Look at the volume in his hair too. Like that shit didn't move. Like, and it was pristine.
I mean, he was fighting back that dress shirt. I mean, it was with those notes he was hitting. That was well done. But no, that is not what I expected.
Yeah, no, I was disappointed to see that not many people were singing along. There was that first one. Like I didn't know.
Like not taken off. Like, did you notice that? Everyone had their hat on, including May. May kept I couldn't believe it. I was a little.
Well, that's what I didn't know. I didn't know if I should have taken it off like mid verse. I felt real disrespectful.
I'll talk about that.
But you're right. The patriotism or patriotic, fire in that audience. I don't. I didn't really see it.
No.
So, well, I mean, I guess they were all dressed as flags. I don't know if you saw the whole delegation there was the 80s. So that's 1984, right? That happens right now. I mean, Lawrence King has been making moves in the city of Omaha, working his way up to get to that point. I mean, just to get to be on the Republican, committee or whatever convention, the Republican convention in 1984. That's not an accident, and that takes some work. And so in Omaha, he's working with. There's a guy that owns I always thought of like Semi-Pro, like the Will Ferrell movie. There's like a hockey team in Omaha that was Semi-Pro there. I can't remember the name of it. But anyway, the owner of that became friends with Larry King. And then Larry King began making friends with other high-end people within Omaha, friends of people who worked for the Omaha Herald, friends with the police department. Anytime the police needed something, just, work, how normal businessmen work their way up. And then he, worked his way up into being able to get into the Franklin Bank. And he bragged about how he was only going to get paid. I think it was like a salary of only $16,000 a year. Like it was around that. It was like a super low number, just like a man of the people. And then he works his way up to singing the national anthem in 1984. And then it was Reagan that got elected in 1984, correct? It was 84. It was his reelection, I believe. And then Bush took over in 88 or 89, whatever. It was like, but it was Reagan and Bush. So anyway, so he's at the one where Reagan's getting reelected. And if you guys, you have questions or I'm not making sense, you got to let me know, because I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna go on a rant here, and like if something sounds fishy too, like pretty much what I'm going to do, I'm going to read you segments from the book The Franklin Cover-Up, written by John DeCamp in 1993. I'm going to read it out of the 2004 edition, and pretty much what happened is the whole preface of the book is no one's listening to old John DeCamp, and he has to get this out somehow. And so his buddy, the head of the CIA, sat him down and said, listen, just make it public. They can't do anything to you if you make it public, and then just walk away from it and go help other people out. And so John DeCamp in 1993, after 6 years of investigating this, wipes his hands clean, writes his book, and then walks away, and does other, I found out he does a lot of other good things for other people, including people in Columbine. So in 1985, less than a year after that, of Larry King singing the national anthem, Jared and Barb Webb, who have been foster parents for quite some time, sometimes up to like 9 kids at one time, but they're very affluent. I mean, like they're very wealthy. She is a cousin. The wife is a cousin to Larry King. And so, there's relation there. And her husband like works for the public, utilities, and is also a shareholder in the Franklin Bank. And so like, they have enough room, it's not like they're just jamming kids in a tiny little place, And so, it's, a nice gesture. They're being, taking in these kids that are needing a home. But in 1985, on June 10th, Nellie and Kimberly Webb, 2 little girls, I believe it's like 12 and 15, are once again detained by or caught running away from their parents' house. Now, it's not their biological parents. These are kids that they had taken in and then adopted. And they're, they live with their grandma. And so DHS, or what do they call it? DSS, Child Services, Child Protection Services, comes out there to grandma's house to talk to these 2 little girls. And according to chapter 2 in this book, and this is not like hearsay. These are all documents that were discovered in the discovery process of this case that was taken to a grand jury in Omaha. So this is the first instance, right? So the social worker gets this call and writes in the report that, and this is a document that they find, and it said that this started in 1978, approximately 8 months after they moved into the Webb home. The girls said they were hit with objects. Here, let me, and I can, that way you guys aren't, you can sort of see it too. Here. All right. All right. Can you see it?
Yeah.
All right. So, said that started in 1978. They were hit with objects like extension cords, a belt, a black thing, which was a rubber hose, and a railroad prop, which was a narrow piece of heavy black rubber, approximately 2 feet long, with several holes in each end. Do you know what? Have you ever heard of that? Is that like the bumper they use on train cars? The little hard rubber.
I don't know.
Like a bumper?
Yeah, like those hard rubber bumpers.
Yeah.
Like, so I mean, so obviously, like they were beating these
It
kids.
hurt.
They said, but then they said
Oh.
before they were struck, they were made to remove their clothing. They were mainly struck on the back or on the behind, but occasionally on the head or on the face.
God.
So, obviously, when you first read that, you're like, God, that is. But then at 2, it's like 1978, and parenting is crazy back then. You can pretty much, short of murdering your kid, you can do just about whatever you want to them.
Parents had some switches.
Yeah, well, this is
hell. I mean, just not long ago, you would have to pick out your own switch and get a spanking with, and if it wasn't proper, she was going to pick out the right one.
Now, that's a lot different though than getting beat by a railroad car rubber.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's got to be hard, like hard, like I mean, the holes I assume is for like aerodynamics. You got to get a swing in there
to go through it. Yeah.
But well, and then I mean, and then it gets a little more intense though. It says, the dad was like French kissing her, and then some very inappropriate stuff he was making her do, and touching her, and she's like 10 at this time when he's doing it, and then if anyone if she said anything, he just whip her, and the mom didn't care at all. In fact, what they found was that her mom was getting Larry King would stop by with an envelope full of photos or videos, and then it gets stuffed underneath their bedroom, and underneath the bed, the parents' bed. And so when the parents were gone, the kids would look at it and it'd be all this like porn, like homemade porn and stuff, and just like really gross stuff that they were seeing. And then they noticed like how the principal like would come visit them often, and like how their mom would bring like those envelopes to the principal at the school and stuff. It's just and like how the principal always treated them with like the utmost respect. It was just like, whoa, and I believe the superintendent was involved with the bank. So, there was a interesting link there. So anyway, she begins to, say that after she got to be 12, Uncle Larry would come by and I mean, like, let's see here. Let's see, page 30. Okay, so she starts making these claims how let me see if I can find them here. Interesting note. They had been reporting this. The department had come across repeated allegations of physical abuse told to our department by 6 different children during separate interviews of being struck for long periods of times while naked by various objects, including belt, rubber hose, and railroad prop, denial of meals in the home, sexual abuse of Nellie by Jarrett, the intense concern by the children out of the web home for the physical and emotional well-being. So like this is noted, right? It's been noted several times, and yet somehow these kids keep getting returned back to the
That's messed up. Like,
it,
it's like you took them in the first place because of safety reasons, right?
Well, it sounds like they were just a paycheck. I mean, were they getting paid handsomely to take all these kids in? Because the way they're treating them and touching them and doing that, like, they obviously don't give a rat's ass about these kids.
No, they're treating them like property. So you're right.
Yeah.
Like, were they getting something from them? Like, was that their ticket?
So Julie Waters. So it's interesting. You know, like we give a lot of credit to John DeCamp, and rightfully so, because he did his due diligence. But there should also there are little heroes throughout this story who did what they could, and there is a child protective service worker, social worker that works for Boys Town named Julie Waters, and these girls mention that. Okay, so we'll hop back. Nellie, when she turns beginning around when she's 15, she keeps getting called up by Larry King, and he's like, hey, I'm going to take you on a trip, right? And so you take her on a trip to the North Omaha Girls Club, and there'd be like a sex party going on over there. There'd be like porn playing on videos and people fucking each other. And then she got introduced to some of the other kids there that were her age, and they said they were from Boys Town. And so they asked her, well, do you remember their names? And she's like, yes. So they make a call to Boys Town. They're like, hey, supposedly this girl knows kids from Boys Town. Can you send someone out here to verify that, or is she lying? So this woman, Julie Waters, comes down to find out if, Nellie's, full of shit or not. And Nellie's also saying in these stories that they'd get there, they'd be Friday evenings. They last about 45 minutes long. There'd be about 20 to 25 young kids there, boys and girls, and then a bunch of older men present at these parties. And then, there would be always someone videotaping. There was always someone videotaping and, or taking pictures, one or the other. And then, eventually these parties turned into, an area for prostitutions where a guy hold out $50, $100, and then walk up to someone, and then they'd go away. And, and she claims that she saw, of course, Larry King was the one that took her there, but she claims to see, the head of this semi-pro hockey team, who's also involved in a bunch of other businesses. They said this guy was he could touch a business that was failing and turn it into gold. Alan Bear was his name. And so Alan Bear's at this party. There's a journalist, a senior editor at the Omaha Herald that's at these parties. The chief of police, Bill Wadman, is at this party, or Bob Wadman, I can't remember. And this is according to the book. And I have to say that, because these are according to John DeCamp's opinions and beliefs. And these are the testimony of the kids that, Nellie and Kimberly, this is their testimony, right? This is what's written down in their testimony. So, and that's all on this book, The Franklin Cover-Up, which, I got a PDF version of it, but I'm going to download it. Go ahead.
It's like a lot of respected members, within the community. So these are they're naming people that a lot of the community look up to for leadership.
Yes. Yep. Yes. Yeah. The whole little
Well,
institute
it's definitely
there.
tight circle groups of the same. Ooh, Warren Buffett. See,
Ooh,
that's kind of what I was wondering
Now,
if.
yeah.
the reason and that is included in the book. Now, as far as testimony from these eight these eight children, Warren Buffett's name's never brought up. Like that I could find or that's mentioned in the book. But Warren Buffett is got his hands tied all over Omaha, all over Omaha. So of course, it's a good point. Who is that? Dan Calvano. Yes, and thanks for bringing that up. So she's talking about these parties, right? And then this is not just like a once in a thing. This is often. So then this is let me see if I can share this from the book too. There we go. I'm sorry it goes to this view every time. Wish I could delete it. All right. So and then it goes on that she accompanied Mr. and Mrs. King and their son Prince on trips to Chicago, New York, and DC, beginning when she was 15. She missed 20. This is the passage in Julie Waters' handwritten report. All right. So this is not the camp's writing. This is independent child protective service worker. Says she missed 22 days of school almost totally due to these trips. Nellie was taken along the pretense of being Prince's babysitter. Last year, she met VP George Bush and saw him again at one of the parties Larry gave while at DC. At some of the parties, there are just men, as was in the case of the George Bush party attended, older men and younger men in early 20s. Nellie said she had seen sodomy committed at these parties. At other parties during Larry's trips, Larry had local prostitutes, 20s and 30s, there to entertain his male guests. She said that they had bodyguards and men wearing guns, and all that type of stuff. But as it goes on, so, I don't know if it just seems like he's always the guy at the good party. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that, but you know what I mean? Like it's where there's no real standards. And and he's not a nice guy.
Yeah.
They say, you mess with him, you get your legs broken. On the outside, he has all the appearances of an upstanding citizen, but underneath, he's very dirty.
Yeah, because this is the same guy that was singing in the beginning. Like he's the one at all these parties.
Yes. This is Larry King. We're talking about, and he's taking Nellie, which is the girl that escaped from Jared and Barb Webb's house. This is her account of like what's been going on while she's been living with her adoptive parents. Like she's been, going to all of these, weird sex parties. She's, been paid for sex, been used for sex. Not good, like it's not good. And so she gets this woman, Julie Waters, comes down there and she interviews her. And she has the yearbook from Boys Town. Now, Boys Town is like an actual village for troubled youths, started by the Catholics in the 20s. And the whole premise of it is to take these troubled youths and turn them into outstanding young men of the community that can then serve as proper citizens. And it's still an establishment today. And there's it's inspired like a whole culture. Like there's one in Korea, and they're all over these little boys town villages where they take troubled youths or orphan kids that have nowhere else to go. And it was started by the Catholics in the 20s. So I forgot the guy's name, Father Finnegan, or something Irish, like old Father Finnegan.
Yeah, Flanagan or something. Yeah,
Flanagan. Yeah,
Flanagan.
Yeah. Now, we had talked about this before, but you guys had never heard of Boys Town, or?
No, I was just looking it up. When I lived in Nebraska, Um, we watched. I don't know if it was the movie with Mickey Rooney and Spencer Tracy, Boys Town. I thought it
Yep.
was Little Timmy or something, but
It won an Emmy. It won an Emmy.
yeah, yeah, we watched it and went to the Capitol building and everything. I remember that now when we lived in Nebraska.
It won an Emmy back in like the 40s or something. It was like an
Yeah.
old movie. But it was this like beacon of the right thing to do, like take these poor kids and, give them a fighting chance. And there was a lot of orphan trains going on back then during the Depression. We talked about that in the eugenics show, where Iowa, they were just, chopping their nuts off. In Nebraska here was willing to train them in to be young men. So, it was this great image for Nebraska too.
Their
Go ahead.
mission statement is changing the way America cares for children and families.
Right. So that gives you an idea of Boys Town. Well, Larry King, had business dealings through the King Corporation with Boys Town, and that was like services provided for jobs for young men that were getting ready to be of age to go work in the work field. Put them to work and get them on a work schedule. And he owned several little shops where these guys could work and stuff. So, he had a lot of dealings with Boys Town. So Julie Waters brings yearbooks to Nellie and says, okay, you mentioned these boys' names. Can you show me a picture of them? And she points out 4 boys. And then one, Paul Bonacci, she says left Boys Town in like 83. And the woman had brought her like, I forget what it was, like 86 through 84 or something. And so 4 of the 5 boys she identifies as seen at those parties with Larry King. So Julie Waters reports this, but Child Protective Services has no power, right? Like they can't they don't have a police force. Not that I'm saying they should either. But they just don't have the funds to like go and investigate things like this. They are to, observe and then report. And then from that point, things should be taken care of. And with these girls, Nellie and Kimberly, I mean, they are talking some serious allegations. So what do Jared and Barb Webb do with their daughters who they claim are just making up crazy lies? They say, okay, let's reverse the adoption then immediately. Let's just get it over with. Let's go. They said that the mom showed up sobbing, saying that the girls were telling lies and that they just wanted to get this horrible experience over with and have them out of their lives. Does that sound like, I don't know. Does that sound like something?
Let's just do a redo. Like,
Yeah, don't bring up the beatings or the taking your clothes off. Let's just forget about it. Next time.
Well, and that's just it. If they can
crazy.
get them to reverse the adoption, and completely cut off any connection to them, they won't prosecute them. And so these, Jared and Barb Webb are trying their butts off to get, pretty much get rid of these girls that they adopted and supposedly loved.
Yeah, it's a get out of jail free card, basically. Like, I don't have to admit to anything. Like, just get rid of them. Okay.
Well, and it's not just that. Julie Waters goes to the attorney general of that county, county attorney, I guess, and says to him, "Look at what these girls are saying. You're going to have to charge these parents for like rape, because they're raping their kids, and they need to have their foster care license removed, and and so and you can't just reverse an adoption. It's very hard." It's very hard to reverse an adoption. And so the state of Nebraska, however, does reverse the adoption. And the county attorney says that no, these girls, Nellie and Kimberly, are flat out lying. And he's so convinced they're lying that he says to Julie Waters, I took him, we're going to take him to the sheriff's department and we're going to make the sheriff give her a lie detector test. And I mean, can you imagine like a 15-year-old girl being forced to go to a sheriff's department, get strapped up with a lie detector test, and then be asked questions about getting raped? And then you're muted there, Clemens.
Sorry about that. But in today's world, you take a witness and you at face value. But in this case, they're making a report, and because they don't like what's being reported, now they're like, okay, well, we gotta check the credibility of this report before we can take it serious. Like that's crazy.
And so the sheriff does this lie detector test, does it 4 times, and he tells Julie Waters, I really tried to break her. He goes, but I believe her. But I believe her because she passes all 4 tests. Still, county attorney calls her a flat out liar. And the reason might be is because the principal of that Fort Calhoun was Kent Miller and Superintendent DeWard Finch. And supposedly DeWard Finch, she mentions not supposedly, she does mention DeWard Finch at those parties. And she mentions that the principal liked little black girls and recalls her mom saying we had got him with pictures with some women. And so that would explain in her mind why he was always like super nice to them when they stopped by the school and like just dropped whatever he was doing when the Webbs came to Fort Calhoun High School. Like, what can I help you guys with? But according to the county attorney, who was I can't remember his link. He was linked somehow to the Franklin Bank. No way. Said no way. Those girls were lying, absolutely lying. So, it ends there. I mean, they lose their. They are able to get out of living with the Webbs. They, live with their grandma, and they are out of Larry King's little circle there. And
but I'm surprised at that point they're not hunted or a loose end trying to be closed up. You know what I mean? Like, usually if you're a part of that, and for somehow you do get you're broken away from that, ain't nobody gonna let you just wander the streets.
Well, they were
keeping you around.
They were taken to a household in Blair, Nebraska. That was a foster care home with Kathleen and her husband Sorensen. I don't remember the husband's name; it was never brought up. But Kathleen becomes a key witness in this case because she takes those girls in, along with several other kids, in which a weird story starts to envelop. But not yet, because with Nellie and Kimberly now out of the Webb house and everything sort of returning back to normal, county attorney will not seek any civil action against the parents, will not sue them, and the kids are now removed and replaced to Kathleen Sorensen's care. Life goes on. So that was
2 of the 9, or did all of them get removed?
So these kids were adopted by them, but they had foster kids. So they had up to 9 kids cycling through. But there was, what we'd read, there was like at least 6 different attempts. Yeah, at least 6 different attempts by kids, either singularly or in pairs, trying to escape the house. So, and they make it clear, like Kimberly and Nellie make it clear, like a lot of these kids were like in and out and then gone, and and then the ones that they adopted, they were like starving, and it was, which is crazy because, the police didn't really want to mess around with it at first because it was, the Webbs. Like, you all know people in the town that, like, you may not know them personally, but in a small town, the important names, like the Thompsons or, the Schwarzenbergs. I don't know, but Schwarzenbergs.
Yeah,
Don't
The
trust
Muskegees.
Yeah.
Yeah, those people, like, or like what the church likes to say is those the ones whose 10% weighs a little bit heavier than the rest.
It's a good analogy. We move forward less than a year. On June 1986, the kids are removed. Like permanently, adoption's over. Now, in May 1988, Officer Carmine gets a report. Carmine, I believe is his name, gets a report saying from a mother and a daughter saying that something super creepy has happened. We think that our child was like getting interviewed to get raped, and this guy's been super creepy. So they need to talk to Officer Carmine. So he comes down there. Lieutenant sends him over there. He goes over there, and this is the story they have to tell him. Her daughter, it is Margot and Brenda Parker, right? So Margot's the mom, Brenda's the daughter. She's working at the supermarket, bagging groceries. This guy says he's a photographer, loves to take pictures of models, and she's got the model body. And this girl's 15, right? So he's like, if you ever want to make some money, here's my card, give me a call. So obviously, and they don't say this, but the mom says that eventually Brenda decides, hey, this might be a good idea to make some cash. So she calls him up and says, hey, can I bring my mom with me? And the guy's like, yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. The guy's name is Rusty Nelson. Old Rusty Nelson. And he lives in the Twin Towers. I got super confused when I kept reading this at first, but it's Twin Towers of Omaha. So it's not the actual cool Twin Towers. It's a crappy Midwest Twin Tower.
Yeah.
But supposedly this
just didn't get hit by planes.
Find a way, May, to just all right. So Officer Carmine is listening to the story, and they say what happens is they go up there, and the guy offers them, do you want some strawberries and champagne? And they're like, no. And so then he's taking pictures, and he never asks her to get nude, but he's always talking about like showing more cleavage or how nice she would look without a shirt on. And like then the mom's like looking around the desk, and or not without her shirt on, in lingerie. How nice she would look in some lingerie, because he's going on a European tour. And so the mom, while the daughter's getting pictures, looking around the desk, and she's seeing pictures of all these like 11, 12-year-old girls and boys like getting picture, like partially nude photos all strewn about his desk. And she starts getting some creepy vibes here. And so then she asks him, like, who do you sell your photos to? And he's like, oh, I sell them to different universities and different news establishments and magazines. And he lists off a bunch of names of universities he sells it to and stuff like that. And so then they get done with the photo shoot. She leaves and immediately calls the cops. And that's when Officer Carmine shows up. And so like, it's like, it's a little odd, right? And so he goes to sort of investigate who this Rusty Nelson guy is. And the mom said, like, he's obviously very gay. Like, he's not like hitting on my daughter. He's just, just very gay. So, they look into this Rusty Nelson. He's a bartender at a downtown gay bar called Max with 2 X's, who's owned by a guy named Gary West, who, does financial business with Larry King, like hosting like parties and events, stuff like that. And so then he decides to go and investigate the apartment. And so like, of course, he can't get access to the apartment. And so like he's asking I don't know, what do you call the guy downstairs that just like meets you at the elevators, like doorman and
Yeah.
like
I thought you were gonna say like
building
superintendent.
manager. Yeah, the superintendent. Yeah, he talks to the building superintendent. Thank you. And the guy says, "Oh no, that apartment is owned by Larry King." And he's like, and I thought it was like super weird because he tried to buy it 5 years ago and was like, when we told him how much it was, he's like, I don't know if I can come up with the cash. And then when he bought it, when he finally did buy it, like he bought this one and he said he wanted it so that, when he stayed in Omaha, if he had a place to crash. But then he bought one at the towers right next door. So like now he's got these two huge, like elegant rooms, and so Officer Carmine finds that, just sort of, that's takes it down, makes a note of it, nothing he can really like charge anyone with, but to me, so you got Julie Waters who does her report and is working things on her end. But, this is like, first of all, kudos to Margot, the mom, for not letting her daughter go to a photo shoot by herself, like some good parenting right there.
Right? Like, doesn't just drop her off and like, hey, I'll see you in an hour.
Yeah, have fun with the
because back then it was probably a little bit more freer, where you wouldn't think second twice about it. You'd be like, okay, I'll be down here, or I'm gonna go to the Piggly Wiggly. I'll be back in an hour.
Yeah.
That's big ups to Margot, for sure.
Well, and by the time they got access into the apartment, Rusty had cleared out. He was gone. There was no trace of him. And, and this mom, she had called those different universities and companies that he had mentioned. And they had said they had never heard of this dude, Rusty Nelson. And then finally she found one guy and said, "Oh, you stay away from that guy. He is a creep." So so interesting day for poor Officer Carmine there. And then June 28th. So that happens May 5th, right? On June 28th, they get another call about and the names have been changed for some of these people. So they get a call by, as in the book, Loretta Smith, right? And from the hospital, saying that they've got this girl saying all sorts of crazy stories, saying that she's witnessed homicides, and like we don't know what to do, and we think like an officer should come down and talk to her. And so Officer Carmine gets assigned to this Loretta Smith, go talk to this Loretta Smith. And so let me give me a second here. So right now, I mean, like, this is like, a month apart. They just sort of getting little driplets of information. Now, Loretta Smith, she's 15 years old at the time. Here, I'll share this. And I want to share it just so you guys can sort of read along with it. I'm right here. I don't know if you can see my cursor right there. So he says she's pretty articulate for a 15-year-old girl. She said that 5 or 6 years ago, so at 15, this would be at not 8 or 9, she met a white male who had coaxed her into modeling for him. He offered to take her home if she would pose for some pictures. He took some with a Polaroid camera, fully clothed, just sort of the regular creepy stuff, right? That you would expect in a case like this. She said, though, that they started taking her to parties at the North Omaha Girls Club, where she knew, among other people, Nellie and Kimberly Webb. Now, here's this girl, just out of the blue. Officer Carmine doesn't know anything about Nellie or Kelly Webb, right? I mean, this is like, downtown Omaha Hospital. These Webb girls are, a little over an hour away from Omaha. So not in the same school district, no real connection there. And yet, when they're talking about, hey, who did you see there? They're like, well, we saw kids and adults. Well, what were the kids' names? Well, there was Kelly, and then there was Kimberly or Nellie and Kimberly, and that's, you know, so interesting, right? So now there's 3 separate witnesses to these parties that are going on at the North Omaha Girls Club on Lake Street. And then she talks about how you know, they would eventually, it turned into where they were getting used for sex and, you know, stuff like that. And if she ever told anyone, they would, you know, they would kill her parents or kill her, you know, just the normal, horrible, gross, controlling shit that those guys do. But then it gets a little weirder. Loretta says at 11 years old, they started taking her to attend these rituals. Now, at these rituals, they were given something to drink, which she said tasted like apple juice, but probably contained some sort of drug, which is pretty rampant back then. And then this is the report that Carmian puts down. During the course of the reporting officer's interview with Loretta Isabel Smith concerning child pornography activity, as well as devil worship, she mentioned the name Larry King as being a participant and a supporter in these activities. She asked how he knew, and she said that she had been taken, she had known the daughter of Gary West. So, like, the owner of the gay bar club was using his daughter in ritualistic, like, Satan worship, according to Loretta Smith. And it's like, I mean, it's just absolutely, like, horrible, the stuff she tells the officer. But then it gets worse, because after the officer leaves and she's, you know, she's in this hospital for a minute, and she gets comfortable with the doctors and they get her to, you know, talk about more and more stuff. She talks about April 19th. The hospital notes indicated that she gave a chronicle. Let me see if I can find out where this is on here. Give me a quick second. This guy would take her out to smoke a little weed. And then after about 3 or 4 weeks, he took him to a party. And which, you know, he takes them to a party, they get wasted, and then they pretty much pass all the girls around. And then it starts to, when she was 10-year-old, she indicated that candles and other weird stuff were at these power meetings, and the men wanted to take her to these power meetings. So one day when she's 10 years old, they say that the room would spin for a while. They drug her, they take her out into the middle of nowhere and lock her in a room with a little girl who she described as a Caucasian infant. And about midnight, the men come into the room. They take the little girl away from her and told her that she could achieve power by killing something that she really loved. And then Loretta described that they cut the little girl's head off, stuck it on the wall, and made her sit in front of it. They indicated later that she had to take the little girl's head off the wall for the men, and then they proceeded to cut the eyes out, and said that the eyes held the power to sight, and then proceeded to eat everything.
Gross.
What the fuck? What in the... Ugh.
They left her in a locked room with that little girl that was dead at that point for 24 hours. She could hear men whipping other girls in other rooms. And then shortly after this, the men came into the room, told her that she had passed the test, and then drove her a couple of blocks.
See, like, this is a kid too, so it's not like they're going to make this up. You know, it's not story time. It's not, you know what I mean?
9 years old. 9 years old.
That's what I mean. Like, they're not going to, it's not just going to come out of left field like, oh, let's make up a short story for somebody. This is, yeah, they're reporting what they experienced, like from their perspective.
They asked her who were at these parties. She said Larry King and Mr. Finch, who was at that time the Fort Calhoun superintendent, which was the same superintendent of Nellie and Kimberly. At one such party, okay, so and that's not just that, like there's, there she says at one meeting, they sacrificed a small boy. They could hear the little boy screaming. She indicated the child was fried and eaten by the girls. At
Now, are
additional,
these kids? Are these kids like these people's kids? Or are they like kids that they coaxed into going with them? Like,
Yeah.
so are these
you
just
don't know.
random kids taken from the Boys and Girls Club or what?
Do you remember? Do you remember back in the? Remember when like girls in the 50s and 60s and 70s, like they get pregnant during high school and they'd like ship them away for 9 months and then they'd come back like nothing ever happened.
Yeah.
Like I wonder, like, and there had to have been situations where they were like farming these. And you remember that Dr. Kermit out of Philadelphia that was doing late term abortions, sometimes delivering the child and then killing it?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, he got
No.
sentenced to like 102 counts of murder because he, was like delivering babies and killing them for parents or moms who had like, yeah. So and that
It's
was
messed up. Like, what? They just came out. I didn't, is
it's
it
like
too late?
2013, I think it happened. So like you wonder, like I wonder that too, if like that's where they were getting, obviously unwanted children, I would think, or orphans, or just, obviously kids that had no one.
Yeah, or I mean, like you always hear the "let me sacrifice my firstborn for fame and glory and power." Are these
Well,
sick
yeah.
fucks giving up their first kids or their firstborn? Or that's what I was trying to figure out where all these damn kids are going. Like,
See,
Did you know?
it's crazy to think about though. Like somebody would actually do that. Like I don't know. To me, that's wild.
Do you know the FBI to this day does not keep a report on missing children? So like they don't know how many kids are missing in the US at one time. So like there's estimates, probably anywhere to like I think it's like 250,000.
Like, do you
Whoops.
think it's that
But like FBI don't
many?
keep track of it. How do you not keep track of it?
And I mean, would it be too many to try to keep? I mean,
I
it's
heard
scary
one
to think about. But
I heard one say that like if the numbers ever came out, it would be just such a huge public uproar that the FBI just doesn't want to handle it. Like they're just like, yeah, we got other things to fry. Like we don't want this pressure to just hunt down every child that's missing. But I mean, still, like you can't still. There's more to what Loretta Smith had to say. At other meetings, she indicated that the men told her and the other girls they must sacrifice for power and described 3 incidents where further sacrifices took place. First one, a 1-year-old white female had her head taken off by saw. The second, a 4-year-old white male was hung on the walls and darts thrown at him. And the third, an Indian female, 3 or 4 years old, had several parts of her body cut off, which it was ground and poured on the girls, and they were made to drink the remains of the child. On August 21st, 1988, she indicated the third and fourth and fifth took place in the spring of 1985 when she was 11. At these parties, there were sacrifices where Mr. Finch, King horses, and the big guy she referred to earlier, they were tested to see if they would keep quiet and how much control the men had over them. The men would try to scare them by, having them watch animals get mutilated. The men would threaten them by saying that instead of killing them, they would just cut off parts of bodies and torture the girls and make them suffer. Asked by details of the first sacrifice of the infant girl, she said that she didn't cry, but when the men cut out the eyes of the girl, she did freak out and was screaming and hitting the walls.
This
That would be a
police
lot.
officer is just one to eat donuts and mind his business, and now he's got himself wrapped up in quite the mess.
That's June 28th, Officer Carmine.
Poor
That's
Carmine,
June
man.
28th. Yep. So then on, let's see here, on July 13th, 1988, Julie Waters over there is now working with Child Protective Services, and they are trying to talk to the head attorney general over there, Robert Spire, right? And he talked to the governor. The governor's like, "Oh yeah, no, this is absolutely horrible. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible." So let's get our attorney general on it. And so then they bring the fake case file over to the attorney general. Right by December, so that's July. By December '88, nothing's happened. So then they try to schedule another meeting, and they're like, "Let's see. Sure, yeah, we'll schedule one here in December for you." They get over there a week before to confirm, and it has been etched out of the schedule. So she talks to the attorney general and tries to, the state attorney general, and tries to schedule a meeting with him. Gets a meeting with him, goes in there. He's like, "Oh yes, yes, the child rape in Omaha. Yes, we were." And according to her account, the file had not been, like, there'd been no activity done on it. Later in the Senate hearing, through investigation, they discovered they had appointed a like retiring cop part-time to the case. Like pretty much just like, "Hey, here you go." And so like nothing had been done on it in that 6-month window up to this point. So now you have Margot and Brenda, who has this weird experience in a King residency, Larry King's residence. You have Loretta Smith saying that the superintendent and Larry King were, going to these different sex parties, and some of them were like, it's not just saying like rape. It's like there's homicides now being said. There's at least 5 homicides that are being said by Loretta Smith. So I mean, that's it's not just
Did they
like,
do another lie detector test to see if she was telling the truth?
I don't remember if they did one on her. But in no case of reading this do I remember ever reading someone failing a lie detector test. So I guess, there's, take that with its grain of salt. Officer Carmine, when called to when they call Officer Carmine, because now you're getting these contacts between, what he had done with Margot and Brenda and Loretta Smith versus what they knew about the Webb girls. They call him up, and he's been transferred to research and planning, which is a one-man department. And just so happens he's the man. And so they ask him, they're like, "Hey man, like, did they force you out? Are they trying to keep you silent?" And according to him, he sort of chuckles and he's like, "No, I actually wanted this assignment for quite some time. So I'm glad I got, I'm glad I finally got it, honestly." And that was it. That was it for the phone call. And so they call him to testify in June of 1989. And he testifies that he believed Loretta Smith. He goes, "I believe her testimony that she gave me 100%. Less than 2 weeks later, the chief of police sends Officer Carmine to the chief of police, or the police department psychologist, to have him declared crazy. And you can actually, you can actually read the form that Officer or Chief of Police Wadman filed with the doctor. You guys talk. I'll see if I can't find it. Oh yeah, here it is.
I Carmine, man, he stumbled upon something absolutely shitty.
This is the letter Chief Wadman filed for Carmine on July 5th, 1989. Less than 2 weeks later. Yeah, there we go. Says, I'll zoom in. I'm requesting a supervisory referral for Officer Carmine to see police psychologist Dr. Stephen Sheretz. I am basing this request on the actions demonstrated by Officer Carmine that surfaced during the Larry King investigation. Prior to Officer Carmine's assignment with Research and Planning, he was serving as an investigator with the Robbery and Sex Unit under the command of Lieutenant Guy Goodrich. While in that assignment, Officer Carmine was involved as an investigator and did participate in looking into matters involving allegations that Larry King was involved in some sexual improprieties with young people. The investigation never did come close to supporting the allegations sufficiently for a charge to be considered against Larry King.
So, not lying on a lie detector test is not like.
But you read that other line below it. Another police officer in Omaha that kept a file on Larry King died of a heart attack.
Now, here's the thing. I'm not throwing any shade at John DeCamp, but I could not find when this guy had a heart attack. So, like the date, as far as date-wise, was Bill Skoleski, did he die of a heart attack like 10 years ago? While or was this, within the timeline of how this whole thing's starting to unfold?
Taking a page out of Bill and Hillary before Bill and Hillary.
Well, these stories, man, like, these stories, it's like you don't want to share. I don't want to share all the sexual shit because it's, it's horrible. It's not just men having sex. It's men having aggressive, mean, vicious. I mean, they talk about putting ashes out on these kids, and these kids still have scar marks on their arms, and I mean, it's horrible. It's like horrible. And then,
But yeah, who checks the checkers though? That's the thing, because it sounds like there's a lot of people, like a lot of respected members, a lot of leaders that are involved, and it's like if they are involved, then like who's holding them accountable for these things? And is this why nobody's saying anything? Is because nobody knows what to say, nobody knows what to do, because it's like, okay, well, this person is in charge of signing my paycheck, and I don't want that to be disrupted,
And the girls, like, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but like, what happens to them? Like, I mean, I can't.
It's not just a girl.
Again, that's just a loose end. I know, but the three people that we've talked about, those are loose ends that have to come to an end at one point. I mean,
well, I think you see a trend on how you handle young children that make these claims. Where was Loretta Smith found? In an insane asylum.
Yeah, drugged with prescription drugs, and like you didn't experience what you experienced. It wasn't real. Nothing was founded.
And Nellie and Kimberly, they go to the county attorney, and
because who are you going to believe? A respected member of society, or
Margot and Brenda Parker? No sexual impropriety happened, so you can't do anything, even if this guy is a creep. So I mean, like, and then Officer Carmine, he's just and he writes down the stuff in his report, and he sticks by it so much that he's transferred. You know what I mean? Like, so, you got Julie Waters, you got Officer Carmine, you got these, it's a story of a bunch of little people doing their part. that unfolds this story. Like that's, I think at the end of it, it's John DeCamp that gets to tell the final story. But all these little stories that people filed and tucked away, once you put it together, man, you're starting to see something very shady going on. And meanwhile, John DeCamp, while he was serving as senator, was doing investigation into the Franklin Credit Union, the bank itself. Now, this bank was said to only keep like $2 million, and small loans is what they were handing out. And yet there was like a raid of the bank, and they found a separate set of books of $40 million. Well, it was $38 million. $38 million that had been funneled through this credit
There's
union.
the truth. There's the real story right there.
So there's some, very serious allegations. Meanwhile, nothing is going on with the government getting, the state of Nebraska wanting to touch this at all. So finally, after no action, it isn't until July 89, they go to their local state senator, who's this old farmer dude. And he, I may have breezed through the part of the assembling of the Franklin committee. So I don't know all the names and players of all the senators and all that stuff. I know the key players that were involved with it, but they form a Franklin committee to actually investigate what's going on with the Franklin Credit Union. And then they assign a subcommittee with John DeCamp, Lauren Schmidt, and then they hire Gary Caradori to go investigate this. And they tell him, don't bring us hearsay. Don't, bring us stuff we can use. Because if this stuff is true, and we're getting reports from 8 different kids, all of these same stories that are going on, and they're talking Chief of Police Bob Wadman is involved in this. He's reported at all these parties. And then you're talking about Alan Bear. I think that's his name. Beatty. And then you're talking about Larry King, who's this up and rising. I mean, can you imagine? You know how it is in the Midwest. To get on public television is huge. And then to be assigned by the Reagan to be head of the black vote of Nebraska, I mean, that's a huge assignment from the president himself. So these are no small fish to fry. The Omaha Herald is people still refer to the Omaha Herald. You just nodding your head back and forth, May. You're like,
yeah. I mean, it's true though. I mean,
what a break.
The Omaha Herald is I think still around, still a prominent newspaper. I mean, it makes me sick. It makes me it's gross. I mean, how high up does this touch Reagan? Or is it just a little pawn in Reagan's whole big
according to
shit?
Nellie Webb, she saw Bush Sr. Twice, which was his VP. But I mean, Reagan, he ran with Hollywood, man. Like, I wouldn't surprise. It would not surprise me. I think he gets mentioned in here. I can't, but he's not like, it's not like every day, like, hey, I was, Reagan's sex boy, but it's one of those things too, where I think it was, well, let the good boys sort of have their fun, get it out of their system, and then we'll go to work and do more good for the country than the bad those boys did last night to, some orphan kids.
It's just so weird how they randomly pick a place, Omaha, Nebraska, like, I mean,
well, and then
out in the middle of nowhere, though.
Yeah, but in the heart of not the heart, but like the Midwest, where just you don't think of stuff like that.
I talked to a local Nebraskan, Jake's from Nebraska, and he was saying Omaha is the trafficking and drug capital of the Midwest. Like you store your warehouse supply at Omaha and then you distribute out from there. Like it's just the perfect, you know, you can go to Colorado, you can go to Kansas City, you can head up north.
Hey, Jack Reacher had a couple books where it all funneled through. I know it's Jack Reacher, but I mean there was,
well, that's
you know,
why. Because
couple of
that's
his,
true.
yeah.
It's
I mean
true.
Omaha was the like you said, the spider web of where you need to go.
But if you have enough people that don't believe something is going to happen, then that's almost the best place for something like that to happen, right? Like if everybody thinks that it doesn't happen, then even if it does and somebody comes out and says it, then it would be easy to just say, no, that sort of thing doesn't happen around here. And for someone to be like, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you remember what was it, Jeffrey Dahmer in Wisconsin?
Well, and then what, the clown killer in Iowa?
Yeah, no, I'm talking about Jeffrey Dahmer. Wasn't that Jeffrey Dahmer in Wisconsin? The one the Netflix made the series about. He like eat.
Yeah. He'd bring people home and then
yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah.
But remember, like that one boy was drugged and escaped, and
Yep.
and the cops got there and they're like, no, we were just, you know, we're lovers and stuff. And the cops were like so grossed out, they're like, oh, well, just, you know, whatever. And they didn't even
Oh
want to
yeah.
investigate it. And so they just walked away from it and then they killed him. You know, they killed him later. Let me see here if I can. Did I just hear a beep? Let's hear a beep. I don't know. Browser has. Oh yeah. You guys can see me fine, right? I'm trying to. I want to pull up this video. So we're at Gary Caradori, right? Gets assigned by the Franklin Committee. Go investigate this. Bring us some real stuff, right? He gets 271 witnesses to come to talk to and interview, and we have some of those videos, and I wanted to play. Right now we're talking. It's we've talked a little bit about like the devil worship stuff that they've done that Loretta Smith has seen, and then we've talked about these parties at North Omaha, and talking about Nelly getting flown out to DC to some of these high end parties. But now Gary Caradori is on this case, and he's trying to, find some credible witnesses. Let me pull up. Boom, share screen. Right here. There we go. Make sure you guys. I don't know why it always goes to that view. It's like StreamYard hates me. We're gonna go with this is Paul Bonacci. Supposedly, this abuse started when he was 6 years old, and the audio is a little rough to hear. So if you guys have any questions about what he says, let me know. But this is his account of one of the many dozens of trips he took with Larry King in his private jet to all different places in the United States. This one was to Sacramento.
They had him in a cage and stuff. Yeah, who was the kid? The kid. The kid. Was he crying? At that point? That's all he did was cry the whole time? They didn't knock. Did anybody ever slap him and tell him to quit crying?
So he's talking about once they landed, they, found some kid, playing on the street, and they just grabbed him.
Yeah, they slapped him a lot. And did he quit crying? He started to, and then I started talking to him. telling him it's going to be all right, and that we weren't, nobody's going to hurt him. I tried to tell him nobody was going to hurt him, but he never believed me. And after a while, I didn't believe him. But they had us. They took him out of the cage and stuff, and they let him run. We were supposed to chase him down.
How big of a cage were you?
He was probably about 5 by 5 feet.
So is this a small cage?
It's a small cage.
And when you say we, who are you talking about?
Me and another kid. Remember. They let
Nicholas?
Nicholas. They let him out of the cage.
Yeah, how many people were present?
It was me, Nicholas, the boy, another team, the pilot.
Pilot was there too?
The pilot was there too. Producer, and there was about 4 other people there that were filming this. And what they had us do is they had their camera set so they let him out so he could run. They had us chase him down. They told us what we did was we chased him down, we were supposed to chase him down, and then we were supposed to drag him back. We were both figured he was running. And so we drug him down after he started running. We dragged him around and stuff.
Whoa. How far did you chase him?
About 20 feet.
That's it?
It wasn't that fast.
Okay, so you caught him, and what did you do? Knock him down or what?
Knocked him down and we drug him back up to where the cage is at and stuff.
How did you drag him?
I grabbed his legs and then he grabbed his arm and we just sort of kind of carried him back up, kind of dragged him a bit.
Was he kicking, screaming?
He was kicking and screaming. And
what was he saying?
Saying, please don't hurt me.
Did you hear him call? Did you hear him call? What'd you do to him, Paul? Huh?
I did what they told me to do.
What did they say to do to him, Paul?
I slept with him.
Okay. Now you were used to having sex with people, right? Something else must have happened then when you called.
He was crying and I was telling him that you're all right. I told the guys, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. But they're like, do it or else, or we'll finish you too.
Who's telling you this, Paul?
I just want to say, the whole time, I don't know if can you hear what's going on here?
I mean, it's kind of hard to listen to, but yeah, you can hear it.
The whole time, they've got this kid they picked up in a cage, and they've been beating him the whole time because he won't stop crying. And then they put him in a cage, and there's some sort of film director there, and like 5 or 6 other people there, and they are recording the whole time, and they tell him and this other kid to open up the cage, let the kid run, and then tackle him, and then rape him, and then so that's and then they get the other kid to rape him, and then someone else rapes him. All the whole time, someone's recording. And this was the trips Larry King would take these kids on. 12.
I didn't hear him mention Larry King's name though.
10. Well, it's so okay. Well, we'll keep playing just so you can, watch.
Yeah, that's right. Thing. If you can do this, we're going to kill you too.
Do what, Paul? Do what?
Just hurt the kid. Okay, so you screwed the kid, then what happened? The necklace screwed the kid too?
Yeah.
Something you're not telling me, Paul.
That's another guy came in. We didn't even know about it. And Nicholas didn't know what was going to go on next. This guy came in and started kicking the shit out of Nicholas, and he started trying to kick the shit out of me. He started beating on the kid.
Who started beating on?
This guy that was the film crew and stuff, he came in and started having sex with this kid.
Okay.
He was bleeding.
Bleeding from where?
Right.
Okay. You okay?
And then yeah, dragging him around.
Are you in the cage?
He started dragging him around. He kept, he just dragging the kid around. He was still having sex with him. He just tossing his kid around like.
Try to speak up.
He just tossing his kid around like it was a bag of potatoes or something. He started slamming him all over the place. Then he came back and he started kicking the shit out of me again. Started kicking my head. I started to do something to him with a stick. Right in the balls and took the fucking back. Then he took me and Nicholas and shoved us in the cage. Then he took this kid and he sat there and sat him up.
Sat him up.
Right next to the cage, and then he started kicking the kid in his face. The kid was just crying. I kept yelling at the guy's son, I said, kill him if I got a hold of him. I said, no, they shot him.
You what?
Shot him. Shot him in his head. Right after that, I tried to kill myself. Took us back to the hotel and tried to cut my wrist.
Who shot him? Paul? Did you shoot him with a pistol or a rifle?
Because they had a gun. Pistol.
Where exactly did they shoot him on his body?
Shot him in his head.
Front and behind?
The front. I was just crying so much after they did that stuff. They opened the cage, they grabbed Nicholas, and they scared me to death. They took him and they drug him over into the woods and stuff. I heard a couple of shots. I thought they killed him too. They didn't.
Anyway, he goes on, and he does mention in there, it was Larry King. He flew in with Larry King, and he flew in with Larry King on that trip. He had also known a few other kids that Garadori finds in this case as well. So, I mean, this is unfolding. Can you imagine being Gary and
Yeah, so that kid's what, gonna go to prison for partaking in this when he was a puppet at the end of, like, that's all he really
he's
was.
molested 3 children. That's what he was sitting in jail for.
But I mean, he didn't do it on his, you know what I mean? He did it. It was him or them in a sense, which doesn't make it right. But
Well,
I mean,
so there's interesting. It's interesting because you have to understand the perspective of these kids. If they're starting at 6, 5 years old, and this is what they see, and this is what they're rewarded for. They get money, they get to fly around and meet rich people. They just, and this is part of it. They have to do this part too, and then it's almost like there's, they get exposed to more and more sick fucks. And they get flown out to Hollywood, and some sick director goes, I wonder. I kudos to Gary Caridori for being able to keep composure and ask questions. That
right.
I don't think I could do it. I don't think I could do that. And then and that's not it. I mean, he meets Troy Boner, who also there's video files of this, and I'll put the link in the show notes. And then there's Alicia's testimony. You can find these on YouTube, and it's interesting. Just to say on the side, it's interesting. John DeCamp mentioned this in an interview. He said when he released this book, he was expecting to get sued, and no one sued him. The only lawsuit that came was when he sued North Carolina for saying that his book was based on lies, and won that lawsuit.
North Carolina just sued him out of the blue, or does he go into detail about North Carolina?
Well, North Carolina, he sues them because book had been released, and they happened to have Bob Wadman, the former chief of police of Omaha, working there as a chief of police, and they exploded it as saying the book was nonsense, and so they reported it as nonsense. And it's interesting because he was hoping for a lawsuit, because when you get a lawsuit, what does that open you up to? Discovery. So no one sued John DeCamp.
He put it out there. He was like, come get it, come get it.
Throwing names everywhere. And you can get the book. I highly encourage you to buy it. Got the PDF, but there's pictures and documents and all of these things that show the correspondence between, King and Boys Town, and, just all of this stuff that's going on, showing that there's these connections. And this is all the whole reason this is getting compiled is so that it can go before a grand jury, and they can go, hey, we've got this evidence, and now, it's starting to fall on the chief of police. He's being mentioned at these parties. And so John DeCamp, when he's approached by Lawrence Schmidt, the senator, he's like, who do I go to when he doesn't say who. He's like, but when someone powerful's in, dealing with some corruption, who do I go to talk to about it? And John DeCamp goes, yeah, you go to the person that obviously has a way more authority over him. And, like above his rank, out of his jurisdiction, whatever it is, he can't be in the same jurisdiction. And so Schmidt goes, well, I'll talk to the head of the FBI of that region, which is O'Hara, or, some Irish fuck's name. And so he goes, but I want you, John DeCamp, to come with me as my personal lawyer to this meeting. And John DeCamp goes, yeah, I'll go, but I want you to talk to him first without me there. So he goes in there, they talk for like an hour, and then John comes in, and they go, we think there might be some impropriety going on with your chief of police here in Omaha. And the FBI guy goes, if you feel like there is anything dishonorable about Chief O'Hara of the police department here in Omaha, consider it as a straight affront to the FBI. Now, why don't you gentlemen sit down and tell me what your names are, your full names are, your date of birth? Like, gave them. He said at that moment he knew he had made a mistake at going to the regional office in Omaha, which is interesting because FBI didn't want, and then they actively
They couldn't want any part in it because they were deep into it, protecting and middling too. I mean, you could tell right off of that where they both knew, oh, we fucked up. We shouldn't have went in here. We should have probably went higher.
Yes, yeah, but I can't find like any documentation. Now they do talk about like some impropriety among some of the officers in the FBI, like guy peeing into another cop's mouth. And then like when investigated it was waived and said, he accidentally peed into the guy's mouth. Like word for word. How do you accidentally?
Oh, hey, sorry.
Oh man, John.
Yeah. John, I told you, quit laying by the urinals. I told you. Like,
and
what?
like keeping gay porn magazine, a lot of gay stuff going on here. And so there's, and they claim that they were using it for evidence, and the investigator was like getting in the in the scene to get into it. It's just weird, but like other officers that like got shipped out of that department claimed like, hey, there's some creepy fucks. Anyway, Alicia Hall, she talks about getting shipped all over 36 times. Starting at like 11, and then participating when she got her first period, requested, so like sought out after, someone requested that. Yeah, like, hey, we want this and this, and a girl went, yeah. So just really like, and it becomes more and more apparent that Larry King is like,
is he a headmaster in this whole thing, or is he just a piece?
He's sort of like, is
he the Omaha Mecca, I guess?
Distributor. He's the distributor. And he's got a bunch of like different little clients where he picks kids up from. That's what it feels like. It's like a collection. Like, hey, I need to collect prostitutes for these parties, because he's known for throwing parties. That election, or that video where he's singing the national anthem, they talk about how huge the party was he hosted after that. Like a huge party. And so like that's sort of his standard. So it makes sense where this 40 million is getting cycled through, like he's providing parties, places for people to meet, get to know each other, build a little dirt if you have to on some people, just to keep them in line for that next vote. And, and so on and so forth. And it seems like he's sort of like the Midwest, Republican, that's his job. It feels like the pre-Epstein, where like, it wasn't just Republicans, but it was definitely, since he was involved with that party, all of those people that were into that from that party knew Larry King and went to Larry King parties. It's always funny about those people like, well, I heard Larry King was like into little boys, or I heard so and so like fucking them young, I mean, countless accounts of that. But I want to get back into Kathleen Sorensen, the foster mom that took some of these kids in. And I just like want to show you her account, because she was going to be or she is they're going to make her a witness to this presentation before the grand jury. And this is her testimony to the Franklin Committee when Gary Caradori goes to interview her. And so let me see here. I'm just sort of like struggling. Franklin Committee. Like here. There we go. All right, so right here, this is her account of what she saw. There we go. So talking about all of these children that's been through her foster care. She said these children from a very young age, and I'm talking about children who came out of birth homes. The family they were born to worship the devil. That's all I can share. And I don't pretend to be an expert. All I can tell you, now this is, think about these people. These are not like, these Blair, Nebraska, corn-fed, roast potatoes. All I can tell you is what the children have told me. My husband and I say, we know things we probably shouldn't know. So she goes into some of the accounts of what she ran into here on, let's see here, page 248. All right. So the first story is about two little boys who were 7 and 9 when they told about sexual abuse at one point. We talked about good and bad touching, and we felt like we had gotten to the bottom of it. Then later that afternoon, the little one began to cry. When we couldn't get an answer from him, the older brother said he is probably crying because he was in the room when they killed his friend. That was the first one we knew about. And as they described that, they talked about that particular victim being brought into a room, hands and arms tied, mouth taped, and how there had been X's marked on his body, on his vital organs. That was bad enough. Within a few weeks, we learned that it was not the adults who had killed the child. It was this oldest boy who was talking. The next person we talked to was a little boy who was very borderline mentally. He had language problems, and it was hard for him to explain himself. Everyone was startled at the way he talked. We were real sure we knew he had not been around these other children or heard anything, but we began to let me move this over here. Question ourselves: are we asking strange questions? Is something odd about us which make children come and dump these things on us? The part which made me believe the child's story, he talked about different babies being killed, but in this particular one being stabbed. He curled up in a fetal position. He was 9 when he was telling the story. He said they cooked that baby. I mean, doesn't this give you like Molech vibes?
Yeah. Like, this is fucking
straight up Molech vibes. He curled up in a fetal position. His eyes got real glazed. He said they cooked that baby on the grill. Oh, it was gross. It smelled like rotten chicken or rotten deer. He then went on to talk about how they cut out the sex organs to worship them later. He talked about throwing, listen to this. I asked him where the bodies went. I did not get any answers from the child about what happened to the bodies, but the other two boys who I spoke about first eventually talked about throwing the babies in the fire. And I asked about that. You mean they were dead when you threw them in the fire? No. Them was alive. Them threw them. Them was alive and them threw them. And by this time we were getting really freaked out. It's like, where do you find a therapist who can deal with this? The next child said that she was 9 when she first started talking about the killings. So they're like 5 years old. They talk about how she began to draw pictures of cats, and all the cats had tails that were on the other side of the page, or the leg was someplace else. And we began to work with her and talk, and she said she had to kill a pregnant cat. She said that she had to kill a pregnant. She first said that they had killed a pregnant cat. We said, well, how do you know it was pregnant? Well, she could not explain that. But as we got into it, she confessed that she had to kill the cat. When I asked her, her description was, with a knife, I just put it in her bottom and twisted. Now, you tell me, how does a kid know that? And then it just goes on to just, they had it live kids. And I mean, it's nonstop. This is what the Franklin Committee is discovering. This is what I'm sorry. This is what Gary Caradori is witnessing. You know what I mean? Like he's going in there and he's like,
I wonder what Gary Caradori, like, to his last dying breath, like having to live with this, having to deal with, like, I couldn't, like, this makes me sick to my fucking stomach. Like, and you think, like, I'm trying to think when all this was going on, like, there weren't that many movies or they weren't making stuff out there, like, where you could get these ideas from. Like, you could blame it on the kids being like, nowadays, oh, they saw it on YouTube, they saw it on this. Like, back then, I'm not thinking there was a ton of footage and stuff out there like that where, like, you could be like,
talk
well,
about
maybe
that stuff whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and it was, during the
without
whole
seeing it.
Yeah. And that wasn't that during the whole satanic panic movement too. Like,
I mean, I was just born while we were. What are we? We're in '89 now, so I have no idea.
And it's not just this. There's tons of evidence. I mean, there's tons, absolutely tons of evidence. So, trial's coming up. The date for the trial is July 23rd, 1990. All of this evidence has been compiled. And Gary Caradori is got, like I said, over 270 pieces of individual witness testimony. There's several kids on tape saying Larry King and these other high-end officials. This is all all documented, being documented as a process of information is being found out from child services, in this report from Julie Waters in Boys Town, in this account from Officer Carmian. And now you've got, witnesses like Paul, I forget what his name is, Bellucci or whatever, and Paul Bonacci and Alicia Owens and Tony Boner. And, and I don't mean, it's such a hard name to, God damn it. So anyway, so God damn it. So I went almost this whole so anyway, all this evidence comes compiled, and court's coming up. Gary's got it all put in now. He's going to go to Chicago with his boy to go to the All-Stars game. And then after that, they're going to hit the courts. And as he's in Chicago with his boy, he calls a member of the Franklin Committee. And he tells them he has found a piece of evidence that will blow the whole fucking thing open. And if you remember, all of these rapes, all of these parties are being recorded, and all that information is being stowed. And the belief is that, do you remember Rusty Nelson, the photographer that disappeared? It disappeared to Chicago.
Ooh.
Gary Caradori had met up with Rusty Nelson. Now, this part is speculative. We don't know that for sure. That is the belief. What we do know is that Gary Caradori called the Franklin Committee and said he had something that was going to blow the whole thing open that they were not going to be able to refute. To me, that sounds like photographic evidence, videotapes, negatives, all of that stuff was stored, because Rusty Nelson developed that film on his own, so he kept all the negatives to those parties. So that's, and it could be, like I said, that little part is speculative, but we do know he went there to Chicago. On his way back home, now he had his own pilot's license. On his way back home, the plane blows up and he dies with his son.
Oh shit!
Convenient.
Yeah, what the fuck? See, I thought he would die of old age. They took this motherfucker out. All this to bring down a bank in Omaha.
The impact of the crash implicates that the plane broke apart midair. They don't know how it broke apart midair. And after thorough investigation by the FBI, it was decided inconclusive.
because the FBI and CIA.
If you know
did
anything
it.
about plane failures, like they study that shit nonstop. Like they want to know why a plane fails, so it doesn't happen. You know, but this I don't know what happened here. Also, his briefcase was missing from plane wreckage. So,
Of course, it was.
So now, with all these witnesses and without their lead investigator, the Franklin Committee goes to court on July 23rd, 1990, 12 days after the sudden death of Gary Caradori. The Douglas County grand jury, as reported by the Omaha World Herald, trumpeted, grand jury says abuse stories were a carefully crafted hoax.
What the
fuck? Not only do they say it is a carefully crafted hoax, before being able to testimony, Kathleen Sorensen died in a head-on car collision with two other guys that were driving the other vehicle, that had been picked up on animal abuse charges, several animal abuse charges.
Pawns. So Kathy was the one that was doing the interviewing, right?
She was
into Boys Town.
No, Kathleen Sorensen was the foster mom that was describing those stories of having
the kids telling them that
they killed cats and killed babies.
Fuck? Yeah.
I mean, they had a story where like they would get all the kids in a church on Christmas, and on Christmas Day they would have this big party, and then everyone would be given a knife, and they'd bring in a baby, and then they would all cut the baby, and then they'd give the knife to the kids, and then the kids would cut the baby till it died. And they would celebrate that because that was the symbolic death of Jesus Christ. Instead of Christ being born on that day, he dies that day. They kill an infant baby. So like she said that for like 10 of these foster kids that came through, this was the hardest like time of the year for them, because they would just hear kids screaming in their ears because it'd be an infant crying as it got slashed to death. They didn't just kill the baby softly, they slashed it. So she dies 1989 by a freak head-on car collision where the two kids are known for rampant animal abuse. And the grand jury decides that there is no this is a quote: they have cleared Larry King of child abuse. We found no credible evidence of child sexual abuse, interstate transportation of minors, drug trafficking, or participation in pornography ring by King or other Franklin officials or employees. To the extent that homosexual relations occurred having such employees or officials, the evidence we were able to uncover showed these exchanges to be voluntary acts between persons above the age of consent. That's not it, gentlemen. That's not it. They then charge Alicia Owens and Paul Bonacci for perjury and sentence Alicia Owens to 25 years in prison for false testimony, Paul Bonacci to 13. The other two witnesses that were going to appear to that case recant their testimony.
Are they still alive?
We'll get to that here in a minute.
Oh, okay.
I'm just giving you
I can't believe that this all just ties into. We started with a terrible school shooting, and now we're into some fucking not turning stomach. Ugh. Wow, my God.
Yeah, I don't know.
This is not where I thought we were going there, Corey.
Neither did I, man. I mean, really, neither did fucking I. I didn't want to go here.
So this leads to like these two boys getting fucked, and then they decide to shoot a school in 1999 because of this Franklin stuff.
Yeah, this was crazy. You know how I keep mentioning this is the updated book, the 2004 edition? You know how I keep mentioning that? There's a reason. It's because in his preface that he writes for the book, he takes that whole page and a half and dedicates it to the shooting in Columbine. and how the cover up he experienced here. And we're not even done. I mean, like, let me just go to 15 people die in the process of this investigation. And they have a list here. Bill Baker, restaurant owner in Omaha, partner of Larry King in homosexual pornography operations, found shot back of the head. Sean Boner, brother of victim witness Troy Boner. He died of a gunshot wound from Russian roulette. Gary Caradori, we talked about him. Airplane blew up. His boy, who was 8 at the time, also died. Of course, these guys didn't care. These guys didn't care about
Nope.
kids whatsoever. So that didn't bother them to just, and then we have Claire Howard. This is interesting. Remember Alan Bear, the semi-pro hockey owner, right? His secretary dies. She supposedly arranged Bear's pedophile trysts. She died in her sleep in 91. Mike Lewis was a former caregiver for victim witness Loretta Smith. Remember the girl in the insane asylum? He died of a severe diabetic reaction at age 32. This guy died from a gunshot, ruled as a suicide. Joe Malek. Aaron Owen, who was the brother of Alicia Owens, who got sentenced to 25 years in prison, was found hanged in his cell in Lincoln, Nebraska, hours before one of her sister's court appearances. Of course, these are all coincidences. Charlie Rogers, homosexual partner of Larry King, said he feared for his life, has had his head blown off with a shotgun, was ruled a suicide. Dan Ryan was strangled, suffocated in the car. He was an associate of Larry King. Bill Skolaski, you guys mentioned him. He had a heart attack. Kathleen Sorensen, foster parent for Nellie and Kimberly, after they fled from Larry King's relatives. The car crash we talked about. Curtis Tucker, he jumped out of a window or fell, depending on which Putin you ask. Harmon Tucker, the school superintendent in Nebraska and Iowa. His death had signs of satanic ritual murder. He was found dead in Georgia near the plantation where Harold Anderson and Nebraska, Iowa FBI Chief Nicholas O'Hara used for hunting. You remember old Bob Wadman? He's now a professor of criminal justice in Ogden, Utah.
You don't say. Really?
And that's the that's the Franklin cover-up.
So, what the fuck? Larry King, what? He's alive? What street does he travel?
I tell you what, that is a hard name. You know what's interesting? That's a hard name to Google. It's just a hard name to Google. Like, I think he's dead. I'm pretty sure he's dead, but like, I'm not positive, because it's not like, hey, Larry King, that guy, it's like, it's almost like
it's going to be scrubbed.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like it's sort of buried, scrubbed. Yep, scrubbed. Even on DuckDuckGo, I couldn't find anything. But Larry King could be a very, Lawrence King is a very popular name too. But you would think Lawrence King Sr., went to prison for bank fraud. I mean, he did go to prison for bank. He did get 15 years in prison. So, the justice system worked. It worked.
What prison did he go to? Can you check the records of?
I'm sure I could, but it's like, what am I going to do? Go talk to him?
Good riddance. Yeah, fuck.
Yeah, good riddance. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah. So I mean, it's pretty. It had like strong, had strong Molech vibes with some of these stories. I remember very much the sacrificing of animals when I was a kid in Vermilion. at the college there's a little Satanist cult there, and they would, they'd have warnings like, hey, maybe good weekend to keep pets inside if you got little dogs, That's why. Because they would take these animals and then sacrifice them, And it's interesting too that they used little children. I mean, think about that. You're being celebrated for doing grotesque things. So then, you think that's okay. That's a good thing. It's horrible manipulation. And this happened in 93. And I mean, in a sense, it has done quite some good, because look at, he mentioned in his book, when this was hushed, and now it's sung from the rafters of political offices, and it's sung from the rafters of the media. Like, anyone who participates in child porn is just disgusting. And but then I would love to have seen his reaction to Epstein Island being exposed, but I would love to have talked to him about how they felt about the cover up. Because, man, doesn't that have similar vibes? All those documents are sealed.
Yeah. It's almost like the modern day of that. I mean, it's dang. It's like it's a rinse and repeat. Like, oh, hey, we dusted this off in the early 90s or whatever this terrible thing. Now let's throw it back. Let's do it again. Ugh.
Just whoever gets in power gets to, to do it.
Yeah. It's hey, what were you a fan of? Oh, well, the Franklin cover up, the Franklin, the bank in Omaha. Yeah, I liked how that turned out. Let's do that again. Jesus.
They were doing what? That sounds great.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just and they said there was several people that would record that shit in Hollywood, and then they'd show it at these Satan parties, and like it's
Too bad Alex Jones never talked on this. That'd be interesting.
Well, this has got to be, yeah. I mean, I reached out to John DeCamp's daughter, and she has a law firm in Omaha, helping civil injustice. So I say, I was like, hey, the phone call, I wish I would have recorded it. I'd been like, I was a little nervous, because I sort of like this John DeCamp guy, even though there's some real interesting history with the CIA that I'm curious about, but nonetheless, I mean, he sounds like a goddamn hero in this case, what he did. And so, I want to get his daughter's perspective on how she felt about her dad, especially since she's a lawyer. And so I called the office, secretary answered. I'm like, yeah, I was wondering if I could talk to Tara DeCamp. And they're like, oh yeah, she's in. May I ask who's calling? I'm like, oh, this is Corey with Phantom Facts. And they're like, can I ask the reason of the call? I'm like, well, I wanted to talk to her about John DeCamp, about, the work he did and, her experience living with that. And he's like, okay, well, she's actually busy right now.
Oh, shit.
Can we call you back at this number? I was like, yeah, that's fine. And I never got a call back. So,
dang.
I know.
So you call back and you're like, hey, it's been a couple days.
Well, and he went on to cover Columbine and these other high risk situations. And I was curious if maybe there was some maybe bitterness, because obviously they were kids, and it's not the most safe situation to be in, especially when you're going after people who hunt kids. You know, it's rough. It's a rough job.
I wonder if she's ever spoken on it publicly.
I would, I sent her an email today. I don't want to push it, but
yeah, we don't need people knocking on your door.
Well, I'm just sorry, it's interesting, it's, this guy put a lot of work into it. And then, his link to Columbine, which it's interesting. A lot of the, I don't know if it's just placement, but, there's definitely pedophilia going on in Littleton. Definitely some abuse that John DeCamp believes has happened to Eric Harris and what's his name? Tyler. What's his name? Tyler Dillenbold or something like that.
Yeah, something. Yeah.
But he believes there was some sexual abuse going on by position of power. And we do know that there was, a known pedophile in the school system at that time. And we know that the principal and Bill Clinton had a weird relation. And we know that all of those forms that John DeCamp had got seized, just like it did, when he brought up this Franklin cover up. Let me look it up, May.
I was just looking about there was what do they call it out there in Colorado? The pedo patrol out in Jefferson County.
Oh, yep. Yeah, the ones that go out and find the guys that are talking to kids.
Yeah.
Those are awkward to watch. I mean,
Yeah.
kudos to them, but like you have to have an amazing amount of self-control.
Yeah.
But they don't call the cops, right?
I don't think so. No, I think they do more of like a put you on blast kind of thing. But because that's what the wife was telling me about, how when I was telling her about this whole thing, that to look into that pedo patrol, because I didn't know that was such a rampant thing in Jefferson County in Colorado. When you brought it up the other day, I was like, "Oh shit! I did not know that." So,
yeah. Well, that's the Franklin cover up. I know Clemens had to leave there. It's a little longer show than we're normally used to, but there's a lot to cover too, and it's a lot to like explain and not make it sound absolutely insane.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane. So, and there's no
gross.
way. Yeah.
And that's the crazy thing, because we both have kids, and it's like, what separates us from them? Why isn't it, like, it's our biggest fear as parents is, you're like, oh my God, like I couldn't imagine. And then, you don't know if, some of these kids are given away freely, like for the whole sacrifice thing, to hope to God they get a better future, or, what it is. It's just, ugh.
They called them power meetings because you get power from them.
Yeah.
And that's like, man, that's just those. And it's interesting in the documentary that was going to be published on Discovery up to the week it was on to the TV guide, and then got deleted. And I told you about this, right? Where it got deleted. They don't talk about any of the Satan stuff, and I'm curious. We're gonna have the guy that made that video on next week, and real respected and investigated journalist. Very does not like conspiracies. He made that very clear in the email. He's like, I'm not a fan of conspiracies in any way, but that's good. Because I just, he went there for, I think, like 8 weeks and investigated this whole Omaha thing in 93. Like, he's way closer to it than we were. And so he's going to come on the show, and we can ask him questions about his gut feeling about, because there are some strong claims about some of these kids. Now, according to John DeCamp, the best way to make a kid seem like they're not reliable in court is to say they're psychotic or have a mental disorder, or, it completely invalidates their story if you say something like that.
Yeah.
And he said that that tactic was definitely used on Paul Bonacci, on Alicia Owens. They wanted to
even that foster mom, she said that there was a couple of them, or that she felt like she didn't come out and say it, but you could if you read it, it's talking about delays or problems. So, like you said, it's an easy way to write it right off and be like, oh no, there's something wrong with that kid. So,
well, and I mean, if you, So you're telling me it's a carefully crafted hoax with a bunch of insane kids, or it's either a bunch of insane kids have all similar stories?
Yeah,
I mean,
I think it's the similar stories. I think they all went through it, and it's just if you get enough people together, and it all matches, you're just gonna think like it's almost too crazy to believe. You're just gonna be like, whoa! But the 18th time you hear it, you're like, okay, what in the fuck? What did we stumble upon? Because I don't want no part of it. I mean,
have you heard about this secret Nebraska group called Arcaban?
No.
It's Nebraska spelt backwards, and it's like a KKK, half Satan worship, half KKK thing. Yes, and it's 150 years old. Since the start of the state of Nebraska.
See, I don't like any of this because I just I fear like Tom Osborne's name is going to come up, or like Warren Buffett, like they,
Well, and it makes sense about Joe Pa and
Yeah.
Jerry Sandusky. Like it was not hidden. It was just looked the other way.
Well, yeah.
And so it went all the way up to all these institutions, like there was a great movie they made about these, like, I forget.
What did you call it? The Nebraska what? Because I need to ask my stepmom.
Just Nebraska spelled backwards. I forget how it's pronounced now. It's fucking stupid. Of course, they would leave it to a secret, stupid Satan cult in Nebraska. Just like, hey, we'll spell it backwards. Spell backwards. Everyone can remember that. You remember that, Harold? Yep.
So, and it's a cult or a.
Yeah, it was like, well, it gave me like they all dressed as like these Egyptians, sort of, but like with there's pictures of it in the book. So like I'm gonna put the book in the archives, the PDF, so everyone can see it. But like there's pictures of what these fuckers look like. And I mean that's the Franklin cover up. I don't know. That's where we went from Columbine to this. Has she heard of it?
I'm just I don't know. I'll ask her tomorrow. I text her to see.
Okay. Yep.
Throwback Thursday. Yep. Ark in Nebraska.
So next week. So we know there's something at Columbine, I feel like. So next week we're gonna interview Tim Tate, 9:00 on Sunday.
Oh, okay.
So, and I'm gonna share the link so you can watch the video as he made it and edited it. So you can, any questions you want, you can ask him. Sounds like a very pleasant gentleman. We'll have to be on our best behavior.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Well, sorry for the downer. I figured this was better as an evening show.
Oh, for sure.
A Sunday morning show.
Yeah, you're so right. I'm glad we chose to do this at fucking nighttime.
Well, until next Sunday, 9:00. Thanks for tuning in.
This is the emergency broadcast system. This is not a test. Repeat, this is not a test. This is our higher psych-op. If exposed, remove from the road.
Yeah.